Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to episode 10 of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And today's guest, I have to admit, we were just chatting before we started recording, and I'm particularly excited about some of the things that our guest is passionate about with leadership, and so I think it's going to be a great conversation. Today's guest is Dr. Jeremy Owoh. He's the Superintendent of Schools for Jacksonville, North Pulaski School District. He began his career in 2003 as an English teacher at Parkview Magnet High School in the Little Rock School District. He served as the Dean of Students at Mills University Studies High School in the Pulaski County Special School District from 2008 to 2009, prior to being named the Assistant Principal at Ridgeroad Middle School in the North Little Rock School District. He served as a principal at Fuller Middle School in the Pulaski County Special School District before being named principal at J.A. Fair Systems Magnet High School in the Little Rock School District in 2011. Dr. Owoh served as the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction and Desegregation at Jacksonville North Pulaski School District for 2 years. And in 2017, Dr. Owoh was named the Assistant Commissioner of Educator Effectiveness and Licensure, apologies if I mispronounced that. In September of 2018, Arkansas Commissioner of Education Johnny Key appointed Dr. Owoh as the Superintendent of Schools for the Pine Bluff School District. In addition to his experience in public schools, Dr. Owoh has served as an adjunct professor and instructor, as well as an affiliate faculty member at Arkansas Tech University at Russellville and the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. Currently, Dr. Owoh serves as the Superintendent of Schools for the Jacksonville North Pulaski School District. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in English Education with a concentration in secondary education from the University of Central Arkansas at Conway, a Master of Science degree in secondary education with concentrations in reading and writing from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, an Educational Specialist degree in Educational Leadership from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and a Doctorate of Education in Educational Administration and Supervision from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I think I just said education about 10 times. So in other words, Dr. Owoh has a lot of experience and education in education. He also completed the Little Rock School District Leadership Academy in 2010 and the Urban Superintendents Academy from the University of Southern California. Dr. Owoh is a member of numerous professional and community organizations, including the Arkansas Association of Educational Administrators, National Alliance of Black School Educators, Junior Achievement of Arkansas, and Goodwill Industries of Arkansas. Governor Asa Hutchinson appointed Dr. Owoh to the Desegregation Litigation Oversight Subcommittee in 2015. He's a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Inc., and he and his wife, Katrina, are blessed with a son, Jackson. Dr. Jeremy Owoh, it is wonderful to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to join you today.
I like I said, I'm so excited to chat about the things that you're, I guess, to chat about some of the things that you're really passionate about, because I'm really interested in your perspective on a number of things. But before we jump into any of that, I'd love to, and I'm sure listeners would love as well, to hear your story as far back as you want to go. You know, what's the Dr. Jeremy Owoh story of how, you know, you came to be the leader that you are today?
All right. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I'm fortunate to have the experience that I've had over these past 42 years. My dad, most people are interested in knowing the background of my last name, Owoh. My dad is from Nigeria, Africa, and in fact, in Enugu State, Nigeria, and he was an international student here in Little Rock, where he met my mom, and they were married and had my oldest brother, Richard, and then the twins, myself and my twin brother, came along, and then I have a younger sister. But I grew up in Southern Arkansas, and educationally, uniquely, since my dad, and I was able to share this with my staff and my students at times. My brothers and I had some speech issues growing up. My dad had a significant accent, and so and that caused us to have some speech issues in early elementary, primary grades. And so kindergarten, first grade, I struggled with just the whole reading literacy skills part. And I had a teacher who really took ownership and took time to work with me after school and during the summer to make sure that I didn't have to be retained. And because of
Wow.
that, I was able to matriculate on to the second grade. And she continued even during the rest of my elementary years on through fifth grade, continue to work with me and provide different resources for my mom to so that she could work with me during the out of school times, after school or during the summer. And because of that, I really grew a passion for reading, and so I was always reading from that point on, and actually became a gifted and talented student. Um, and then,
Wow.
of course, in 11th and 12th grade, I was taking AP English courses. Loved those literature classes. In fact, when I matriculated to college, the University of Central Arkansas, I originally became, I declared a business major. I was planning to be a marketing major and
Mm.
obtain my marketing degree. And all the way up to my 12th grade, the end of my junior year, um, I kept thinking to myself, I love marketing, but I'm not really sold on doing it for the rest of my life. This is not where
Mm.
I'm passionate about. And so I remember the literature classes that I had, and really love the whole thought behind teaching literature, grammar. And so I decided to take one class that summer in education in the education department. Loved it. And from that point on, I changed my major from marketing to English education. And so I became an education major and loved it ever since then. I interned um, a year later at a local high school, Parkview Science Magnet High School in Little Rock, and they hired me the following year after my internship. So although I struggled in reading earlier in my life, I actually uh, ended up being an English teacher. So I taught ninth and 10th grade English and creative writing and loved it. And then I taught developmental writing and and other courses at the 2 year technical college level as well as the university level. And so that's a quick rundown of my educational experience and how I became an educator and why I became an educator. I really feel like, we hear it all the time, but this is really true to who I am is that to whom much is given, much is required. And because I had
Mm.
so many educators and mentors who gave back to me, who sold into me and gave to me to make sure that I was supported and successful. I felt like it was my responsibility to also pay that forward and to give back. And I continue even when I became a teacher. I always wanted to have the most impact. So I always planned wherever I could be, wherever I could serve, I wanted to have the most impact. And that's the reason why I became an administrator, so that because I knew that when I closed my classroom door, I would be able to influence those 30
Mm.
students at that time, 150 total for that school year. But if I was the administrator, I could impact the educational experience for all of those students within that building. And if and when I became a district administrator, I would be able to have uh, an impact on even a larger scale. And I've been fortunate, blessed to have experiences that have given me the opportunity to have a major impact, and not just over a district. When I went to the Department of Education here in Little Rock for the state of Arkansas, I was able to really impact the education as it pertains to teacher support, development, recruitment, and retention across the state of Arkansas. And so that was a great experience within itself.
Yeah, that's. I appreciate you sharing some of your story, and I have found it really interesting working with school leaders around the world. I feel like there's a pattern that's emerged for me, which is it's amazing how many school leaders had some sort of for them there was some sort of challenge they experienced in school. I just the number I remember working with a team, a school leadership team recently, and as we went around the room, I think about half of these or half of their executive team experienced bullying as an example in school, and it was one of the places that for them they hated being there, and it's out of that experience that they now have such empathy for students and that fueled the passion. And I hear it's not the same, but I hear the same pattern, I guess, for you, which is when you were young and you were really struggling and things felt like they might have been stacked against you, and this teacher stepped in and she had such a profound impact on you and your family. And I just love the story that you, you know, that what the very area that she was helping you with in those first couple of grades is really the area that you then went and became exceptional in it and really found your passion in, and then decided to turn around and invest in others in education.
Yeah, it's definitely as when I reflect on it, it is it's a remarkable experience for me. It's really full circle, like you said, to work in the profession that at one point I didn't think I would ever be successful in academically, and then to have an educator to give back. I I personally see the impact that one educator could have on an individual's life just from personal experience, and to me that's really like you said where the passion developed, because I wanted to be able to do the same thing. And from a student as a student who grew up in poverty, um, education, that my teachers always told me that, education is something that no one can ever take away from you.
Yeah.
And so you have to get as much as possible. Anytime there's time to grow, you make sure that you're doing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Phenomenal story. And I guess as you look back, and I appreciate that you gave us, I loved reading your bio because, like I said, there's so much education in there. It was I just loved your passion for education and really how you've I guess walked the walk in terms of being an educator and gone and continued to educate yourself as well. If you as you look back on your career, which like we went through a bit of the winding road in the bio, and then you explained it there. What are some of the moments as you reflect that similarly to that moment in year one, or in grades 1 or 2, they really played a big had a big impact on you becoming who you are today? What are some of those moments that really shaped you, where there was a mentor, where you really dropped the ball somewhere and you think, but it was actually how someone else led you through that, or where you had a really negative experience with a leader and that really shaped, sometimes we learn what not to do. Um, what are some of the moments that really shaped you, some of the specific moments that shaped you to become who you are today?
Well, that's a really great reflective question. Um, I believe one in particular, it's really going thinking back, even when I was in college, when I was at that point of not really enjoying college and not thinking that I was going to be successful in it.
Mm.
I didn't like the business courses. And I had Dr. Theman Taylor. He was a professor at UCA, and he was the one, and he taught history, and he told us during one day, we were at a program, and he was speaking, and he said, "You have to find something that you're passionate about. When you find something that you're passionate about, then work does not work is not work. It becomes what you enjoy, what you do on a daily basis to give back. And I, really realized that I did not want to be a business major, and because I didn't feel like I would have an impact. And
Mm.
so I made that decision. Um, I tell people that's the end of my junior year in college, and I changed my degree program
Wow.
into a completely different degree program. But it was definitely worth it. And so for me, that was a life change, because I just, as a young person, and not really knowing at that time what I was going to do, and then to make that change, that was a life altering change. And I also tell people during that time, the year um, before I was to graduate, I was with my fraternity brothers, and we took a trip from Little Rock to Memphis. And on the way back, we were in the 15 passenger van,
Mm.
and one of my fraternity brothers who was driving fell asleep, and we had a car accident. The van actually flipped 3 times, and we lost 3 of our fraternity brothers
Wow.
in that event, in that accident.
Mm.
And that was a very traumatic time
Mm.
for me during that time. But it made me really appreciate life and realize that it doesn't matter how young you are, doesn't matter how old you are. Uh, the time that you have on earth is precious, and you definitely got to make every minute, every day, every moment that you're with somebody count. And so all of those things started to happen around the same time, that really
Mm.
made me have a reality check, that I, you know, in literature, we hear carpe diem, seize the day,
Mm.
and that's really how I've really looked at my education, my professional career, personal life. I mean, it's just seize the day, seize the opportunities, making sure that I can make an impact, even if it's one person at a time. Making sure that I can make an impact um, at any time. Um, when I started teaching, I had a principal who actually, when I became a teacher, actually moved from being a principal to an assistant sup. And he's definitely has always been a great mentor to me. And
Mm.
he always gave me wise counsel. One, to never burn bridges, because you never know when uh, that bridge is going to cycle back, or uh, that journey is going to bring you back to that particular bridge. And that's been so true, because if you look at my career, I've been fortunate to be able to leave a district but come back to the district in a different position. And then, of course, in education, people don't realize, but it's it's a really small profession. As vast as it is, it's small because people are connected, and your reputation a lot of the times definitely precedes you.
Mm.
And so that's one of the advices that Mr. Babs gave me, was to never burn bridges, and always make sure you stick to your word. Integrity means everything, and you always have your word. If you don't have anything else, you have your word, and you stand on it, and you make the very best decisions. And Mrs. Celestine Piggy, one of my assistant principals when I was a teacher as well, is
Mm.
always said that too. Stand firm on your
Mm.
word, be a man of your word, and don't ever change that. And when you make decisions that's best for our students, then that's the very best decision. When you make the decisions based on their well-being and what's best for them, even if it turns out to be not a good decision, it's the best decision because you made it based on what our students need at that time. And so those have been definitely some um, integral parts in my career. And then recently, when I had the opportunity to come over here to Jacksonville the first time as assistant soup, and that was a unique example. Unique experience because the district was carved out of an existing district, and that was the first time that it had ever been done in the state of Arkansas. And so to come over and help build the district, not too many educators or educational leaders have had that opportunity. So that's been a great opportunity. But my superintendent at that time, who hired me, told me that it's great to get an education and get the degrees, but the true education is the experience you have on a daily basis with the people you serve. And that's so true because you can read about the theory, the past experience in the textbook, but you do not really learn your craft until you are working with the people you serve, and those people change every year. And so you're always, and that's why it's so important that as leaders, as educators, we should always be growing, because the people that we serve, the people that we support, they're changing, they're growing each year. And so it's so important that we do not remain stagnant, because that can stunt their growth as well. And so educators really make a difference and have a responsibility to not only impart the academics, the behavior, educational support, but they too have to continue to grow as lifelong learners.
Yeah, that's so true, and I appreciate you sharing about that the tragic accident that you went through, and I can only I can't even imagine how traumatic and life shaping that would be to lose three friends in a car accident like that, and the amazing advice you received around not burning bridges. I love that, and it's so true, and it's proven to be true for me as well. I would completely agree that you hear it and you think, but then you live it out, and it only takes a few years, and things come back around, and you're very thankful that
Yes.
you that you protect when you could burn a bridge because it would feel good. You don't, and you choose another path, and it works out for the best. Um, yeah, that's excellent. So I'm interested to ask you about for you, when it comes to building a culture, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's in a school, and particularly across across a whole region, for a department. What is it for you that really defines culture, and anything specific for education? And a lot of these principles usually go beyond industry, and they're quite universal in my experience, that you found is really helpful for investing in culture.
Well, and I think the culture is really the pulse, the pulse of the organization, the things that are happening behind the scenes, the things that are happening, and the tone, the theme, the whole I guess persona, for the lack of the better word, of the organization. Like what really the attitude and the behavior of the organization, and so for me, school culture or district culture is really important. I mean, if you're going to um, build an instructional setting or environment where students, and we call our students here in Jacksonville scholars, where they would be successful and where our staff members would continue to grow, and we could continue to increase their capacity, then the culture has to be addressed. And I think the only the way that you can really influence culture is the relationships, because relationships can either grow it positively or it can impact it negatively. And so you have to invest in the people who you work with and who you serve. And you cannot expect to do anything else within the educational setting, within the organization, without building those relationships first. And that's teachers with students, teachers with parents, principals with teachers, support staff members, students, parents, and even for me as a superintendent, community, my staff members, my scholars, my parents, relationships. You have to build authentic relationships before you can do anything else. Before you can even crack open the text to teach, you have to build those relationships. Students are going to respond favorably, and positively if they have relationships with that teacher. A teacher, and I always tell my principals this, because I believe it as a leader. When we have staff members to leave, they don't leave our students. They don't leave the school. When they leave that building, they leave the leader. Something that the leader did not do or did that wasn't positively impactful for that particular person. So you have to, even when you have to discipline a student or a staff member, there has to be a relationship there.
Mm. And what advice would you give? I think this is an area where a lot of leaders that I've worked with, often there'll be a point where they're not aware that it's something that they struggle with, and then there's that moment of self-reflection, of self-awareness, an aha moment where they go, "Oh, okay, this isn't something that I'm necessarily naturally gifted at. I'm going to need to grow in this." What advice would you give to a leader who knows they need to grow in relationship building when it comes to,
Well,
how do you do that really well?
first it's the acknowledgement of it. I mean, you have to realize that every leader will not be 100% prepared for every situation, and they're not going to be able to engage and interact positively from start with every person they encounter. But just as we expect our teachers um, to build professional growth plans, participate in professional learning, our leaders have to do that too. If you know that you are charged to work with a diverse group of individuals, people you serve, then you know that's not your strength, then that's a growth opportunity for you, and that those are the professional learning professional learning goals that you need to create for yourself. I tell people I'm an introvert who grew to become an extrovert at the times I need to be an extrovert, because I could be fine just by myself, but I could be home by myself reading and content. But as a leader, I can't be an introvert and build relationships with my staff. I can't be an introvert and lead and make the tough decisions that need to be made. I can't be an introvert and build the relationships within the community or initiate the conversations that have to be had with my board members or with my parents or with my staff members. And so I have to take ownership of that and look at the aspects of my personal and professional life that I need to grow in. And so as leaders, we have to take time to look at that. What are some areas that I can fine tune or that I can grow in? And if you truly want to be impactful in that role as a leader, then you're going to take time to invest in those areas and build that foundation in it. And that's what I've learned all the time, that over these years, is that you cannot start any project, any program, any initiative without getting to taking time to getting to know the people you're working with and you're supporting and serving, and that's so key that a lot of people would like to just jump into the work and think that they're going to get everyone to join in and take ownership of it, but that's totally false. People are going to work hard for people that they know, and one, that they know that they care about them, but also
Mm.
that they've taken time to get to know them and build those relationships. So before you can jump into any major work, you have to make sure you invest in getting to know the people around you and giving them the opportunity to get to know you. So a lot of times, as leaders, we're so quick to talk all the time and have all the answers, but we need to listen more than we talk, and respond, because we don't do that enough. And I think a lot of times we miss out on the important things because we're always talking and not listening.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so true. I think sometimes as leaders we don't see building connection and getting to know people as it's not a KPI. You know, it's not a I've got more important things to do, and I think it's really helpful to realize and have that lens to understand that before you're going to achieve anything significant with a group of people, I love what you said. They need to know that you care, and they need to feel known. They need to they need to have a sense that you know them. I think there's a book by Patrick Lencioni about employee engagement, and he talks about one of the three big things that disengages employees is a sense of anonymity. If I feel anonymous, particularly for my leader, if I feel anonymous,
Hmm.
like I'm not known, your chance of engaging me and your chance of keeping me, particularly if it's a great employee. I think we really underestimate the significance of what you just said.
Yeah. And I think that's we're actually doing a book study across the district. I'm even doing it with my board members. It's called Fearless Schools by Douglas Reeves. And it's talking about building trust and resilience for learning, teaching, and leading. And one of the things that really spoke volumes to me is, as leaders, we have to remember to take the people who are going to be impacted by our leadership, by our roles, take them along with us on the journey. And don't expect them to just come in at the end of your journey and then be all right with everything, to be okay with the decisions you've made. If you know there's a need, why not bring them, the people who are going to be impacted on the front end, and bring them to the table and let them have an active voice, then versus during solving the issue or putting something in place, and then you're shocked by the fact that they don't agree with what has been done, or you didn't get the response that you thought you. Well, that's because they didn't have a say in it. They didn't have a role in it. They didn't have a voice in it. And so the book talks about, if you don't provide that opportunity to bring people along with you, you're going to allow gaps to happen. And when you allow gaps to happen within your organization, that allows people to fill in the gaps. And that's how the distrust starts, because if you don't provide people the opportunity to know the why we do things, the how we do it, when we're going to do it, then they're just going to assume. And it's not a bad thing on their part. It's because the leader has not given the opportunity or provided the information to fill in those gaps with the people, or for the people who are going to be impacted by those decisions, or that program or initiative, that decision that's being made.
Wow, that's so profound. I've never heard that before. The idea of gaps, but I love it. Can you? Sorry to ask you to explain that again, but I think it's so good. I personally want to hear it again. Can you explain this idea of gaps and how if you don't fill the gaps as a leader, then others will? That's just blowing my mind.
Yeah. So, and I tell you that it really made me pause and say, wow, that's so true. It's when, leaders make decisions, and then even though they think they're going to be impactful for the people or the organization, but they've not provided the opportunity for uh, the individuals to be at the table, to have voice in the process. And so the process is the journey. And so if you don't allow people to walk with you or join you on their journey, that creates gaps of information, of the know-how, or the why behind it, or the understanding of the need behind it. And so when you have those gaps and you don't take time to uh, allow people to understand the need and the reason why, the rationale, then you have then allowed those gaps to form. And then people from all over the organization will fill in their own gaps. The joke with my staff here is the street committee. You always have a street committee. That's the rumor mill. And if you allow gaps, if you make a decision and you haven't taken the time to talk to the people and explain to the people who are going to be impacted by those decisions, then the street committee is going to fill in those gaps. That's your social media. That's your car line people. Those are your discussions and dialogues in the teacher lounges or at the water fountain. This is a reason why he's doing this, or this is a reason why this is. Well, that's the fault belongs to or rests with the leader, because the leader hasn't taken the time. And that's part of the trust building and the relationship building, is taking the time to bring the people who are going to be impacted by your decisions along with you. Instead, you try to bring them to the table at the end when the decision has already been made.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work well.
That's just
So
so,
you have to make sure you fill in the gaps and not allow those gaps to be there, because then others will fill in those gaps.
I think what I love about that idea is that when you start hearing rumors, when you start seeing mistrust, it's easy to blame it on the people. What is it? Why are they thinking like that? And to blame it on the on the street committee, on the rumor mill, and find fault outside. But it's a great self-reflection. It's a great check for a leader to say, okay, well, if they're thinking that, then they've filled in the gaps, which means I left a gap. Where did I leave the gap? How have I not engaged with people and explained it to people? How have I not allowed them to be part of the journey? So that there was a gap that they've then filled in with something that's not true, or something that's a miscommunication.
That's so true. And that's where I, as a leader, that I always try to do, I always make sure that I take time throughout the day or throughout the week to have that time where I self-reflect. And I share with my building leaders and department leaders, you have to do that. How have I communicated effectively? What went well with that? What could have done better? And then actually engage your people. What part of this was clear for you, or what could I expound more on? One of the things in this book, Fearless Schools, that I highlighted, it says, that goes along with what we're talking about now. It says, when employees only hear the announcements of changes without understanding the rationale behind these changes, emotional distance, distrust, and paralyze can follow. Um,
That's so true.
Change is associated with fear, and fear breeds distrust. So even if as a leader you have the best intentions,
Mm.
If you don't take time to explain the rationale or the need behind it, that's when you allow those gaps to form and people will fill them in. And that's when leaders get the reactions that they were not prepared to receive.
Yeah, that's so what yeah, I love that when you give the announcement but you don't give the rationale behind the announcement. There's one of my favorite books is Blue Ocean Strategy, and I love that book as a new way of strategic planning. And there's just one section in the book where they talk about how to implement change well through an organization. I think they call it the people part of change, the people part of strategic planning. How do you actually get your people on board? And they talk about three E's. And the first E is engagement, engage with people. The second E is explain, and the third E is expectations. And I feel like what we often do as leaders, if we bring people to the table when the decision's already been made, we're just coming with the expectations. Okay, everyone, this is the decision we've made,
Right.
and now this is what we need you to do. Here's the change we need you to make. Here's the new way we're doing things, and we completely skip engaging, which is what you're talking about, bringing them on the journey, engaging, letting them weigh in, not being threatened or afraid that your people are going to derail the whole process, but actually realizing that having them on the journey is part of a successful process. Everyone wins, and then explaining. And this is the funny thing. That's why I love this idea that you've just said about announcement. Don't just give the announcement; give the rationale behind it. I think sometimes as leaders, we just need to explain things. We just need to actually say to people, you know what, this is. It was really clear that there was a group of people who really wanted this, and for us as as leaders, we looked at it, but because of X, Y, and Z, even though there were some really good arguments for that, we decided that because of these things, it was actually going to be more important in our view to do this. And sometimes we don't want to say that because we feel afraid. But I think explaining the rationale, even when it's a case of, hey, we disagree with some of the things that you put together, I think people acknowledge that. I think people sometimes they go, oh, okay, they respect me enough to tell me to tell it like it is and actually
Exactly.
be upfront with me. Um, that's really profound, Jeremy. I'm going to be thinking about this gaps idea. I think for the next couple of months. That's just blown my mind.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, but you're so true. The respect means a lot. That you're so true, especially when you're dealing with other adults.
Mm,
When you take time to share the information, and I've shared this with my leaders before. There's nothing in the school system when about decision making at this level that should be a secret to any and everybody. The budget
mm,
should not be a secret. The way we hire, employ people should not be a secret. Our process, none of that should be a secret. So why? I always wonder, why do leaders hold all of that to their chest and
yeah,
not take time to explain? So many times I think we would have um, such better or more effective relationships between teachers and administrators, support staff and administrators, if we just take time to respect their roles and take time to explain to them, this is the reason why we cannot give a raise, or this is the reason why we're having to close this school or make this decision or make this personnel decision. But so many times we just tell them this is the decision that's going to be made and
mm,
expect them to be all right with that.
yes, yeah, exactly. I saw an example of this through the pandemic with a leader who I thought did this really well. They they in their organization they weren't being affected severely, but they knew that if certain variables happened, they could be, and so they were really in that limbo where they didn't know, like, it wasn't, things weren't going really badly, but also there was the threat of that. And one thing that I really respected that they did is they got their team together and they said, and it was a smaller organization, and they said to their team, hey, this is where we see this could go, and we just want to say that if X, Y, or Z happens, here's the plan, and it included things like, we're not going to let anyone go, because for them that wasn't going to be, I know a lot of organizations, they had to take drastic steps, but for them they said that's not our plan. Our plan is that if the worst was to happen in our industry, we would recommend all of us taking a cut of 20%. And they really got ahead of it and really told people, and it wasn't like they were announcing good news, but because they just let everyone into the process and said, we're going through this now, we're watching, and we are worried that these things could happen. So here's what we're thinking: if they do happen, this is what we do. And it was amazing to watch them lead their team and to see their team get on board with that, even though it meant agreeing to potentially taking a hit personally on wages. I think because they explained it, I think everyone was ready. In the end, they didn't have to do that, but it was amazing to watch how people got on board with the idea, with some really tough ideas, because they were part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. When I was superintendent in Pine Bluff, one of the things, so I went there because the school district was placed in fiscal distress,
Mm,
and so I had to come in and make some fiscal decisions immediately, like some major ones in a short time period. And one of those, within that first year, we had to decide to close a school.
mm,
And when you close a school or even start the process, um, that's going to impact a neighborhood. That's going to impact a group of people. And one
yeah.
of the things I told my leaders and even my direct supervisor, Commissioner Key, is that we have to take time to explain the reason why. We have to show,
Mm,
not just explain, we have to show them. And so I went through the budget. I showed them how we were deficit spending, how majority of our students at that particular school, they were being bused across the city, passing the other elementary schools, the liability, the safety concerns of the building, the renovation costs. And so, and they were long meetings, and I wanted to respect each group so that they feel like they had my time. So I met with the
mm,
students, I met with the faculty and staff separately, and then I met with the parents and community members separately. Because one of the things I always want to remember is that a lot of times our parents are hesitant to come to school events, district events, because they feel like at times they're not as informed or as knowledgeable about the inner workings of a school system as the educators, and so they don't feel like um, they're equals to everyone. And that's a lot of times because when we use acronyms or use educational jargon and don't take time to explain and
mm.
or just talk in layman's terms, just and so when I met with all of those groups and explained it to them, they were okay. They completely took ownership. This is what's best for the district. This is what we're going to do. What do you need us to do? And that to me, when I read this, that part about bringing people along with you, before then, I would say we need to make decisions with the people
Mm.
that we're going to impact, and not at or to the people that we serve. And to me, that's what I connected with. That is that, so many times we are accustomed to doing things to people or at people and not with people. And
Yeah.
we definitely, as leaders, if we're going to do, make any impactful decisions or changes that need to be made, um, we have to do those things with people and not to them or at them.
Yeah, I love that. We need to do things with people, not to them or at them. And the thing that comes to mind for me is it's it could be the difference between. I feel like when you're doing things with people as a leader, particularly if you like things a certain way, or that sometimes people are promoted because they're very good at dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and doing things really well and in a linear way, and then you start managing, leading, working with people, and it's messy. because people are human beings, and it's sometimes you want to do something with people, and then you get hit with a curveball. And I think the truth is, it reminds me of, it's a funny analogy, but it just came to mind of cooking. I'm not a good chef. I'm not a good cook. I can cook something basic, but I love watching. My wife's Greek, and I love watching her mum cook, or her yaya, her grandma. Someone who's really loves Greek food and loves, and you know what, the way they do it. There's so much that is refined through experience, but there's a messiness to it that if you tried to make a note of everything they do, but then you eat it and you're just like, what have you done to this to make this 100 times better than than anything I could have done in a recipe book? And I feel like that's what happens in leadership. There's a messiness you need to embrace, where you actually go, you know what? It might seem easier to just do this, to tell it to people, or to try to skip the step where I do it with them. But I'm going to walk in the room. I'm going to have the meeting with the parents. I'm going to meet with the students. I'm going to let them into the rationale behind it. And I'm going to embrace that, because at the end of the day, it's only through doing that that you can really make something beautiful. Otherwise, it may seem easier in the short term, but you just won't. You just don't get that culture, those relationships that lead to a really beautiful outcome, where you've got a group of people moving in the same direction, really working well together. Yeah, it's such a rich thought, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to invite you back for another conversation, because I really wanted to talk to you about educational equity, and but I want to really do that conversation well. So what I'd love to do is, maybe we can do a round two another time, and we can really delve into that, into educational equity, into equity when it comes to leadership. I think it would be wonderful to have another conversation about that. That's an open invitation to come back and to have another conversation around that. But as we land today, I just want to thank you
I
for
would
your
love
time.
that.
And yeah, awesome. That would be great. I think our listeners will be looking forward to that, because I've really loved chatting today. Do you have any final thoughts out of today?
No, just I would just say thank you for the opportunity to join you today, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation as we dive into educational equity. That's definitely a passion for me.
Mm.
A passion of mine is really taking ownership of what equity is, and and understanding that equity looks different. Um, and in every classroom, every school district, every community. And so definitely excited to join you again and start that conversation.
Yeah, oh, I love that. It's a great cliffhanger, because I think I'm going to learn a lot from you when we chat next time about that, and I think a lot of listeners will be on the edge of their seats as well. So stay tuned for for the next time I have Dr. Jeremy Owoh on, and so that brings us to the end of the episode. I just want to once again thank Dr. Jeremy Owoh for joining me, and thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. The heart of everything we do at Clarity, including this podcast, is to invest in leaders to become everything they're meant to be. And so it's our hope that today has played a role in that, in investing in your leadership and helping you to become the best leader you can be. And a big thank you for subscribing and following and liking and sharing. If you really enjoyed today, it really helps us out for a couple of things. If you want to stay in the loop, then make sure you subscribe or follow wherever you listen. And then the other thing you can do is you can share this podcast and share this with your network, share this on social media, wherever, and that helps us to get the word out. Oh, and then the other thing you can do is also leave a review on one of the podcasts, because that also helps us to get in front of more leaders who we would love to impact. But thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And you know, my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jono White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.